another individual.
Formulate it like this.
Yes.
Maybe your submission will be like this, that a party in power
Yes.
is in a much more vantage position to secure a greater amount of funding through the electoral bonds.
Yes.
Because of its ability to dole out a quid pro quo in the form of government contracts or government leases or licenses or concessions.
Or policy changes.
Or policy changes which will benefit that particular industry.
Or warding off excise issues, etc., etc. So there are all those
favors. All those favors.
Yes.
And by therefore concentrating the allocation of electoral bonds to the party in power, this is a very important source of perpetrating power. And therefore it is contrary to democracy.
Yes. In fact,
I think that could be the formulation,
yes,
really.
Today, money is universally recognized by the Law Commission, by various bodies, including judgments of this court, that money power or the very unequal use of money power erodes the concept of free and fair elections or a level playing field in elections, etc. And what this electoral bond is doing is that it is further making that playing field uneven by, as I showed, my lord, almost all the electoral bonds, 99.9% have gone, either more than 50% have gone only to the ruling party at the center. And the remaining, almost all the remaining have gone to ruling parties in the states. Only one party, I am told, that is CPM, which is before your lordship, has consciously refused to take electoral bonds. So even though they are the ruling party in one state, they have not received any electoral bonds. But otherwise, almost all the electoral bonds have gone only to ruling parties. And therefore, electoral bonds cannot even be taken by smaller parties which receive less than 1% votes. And they cannot be taken by individual candidates. Therefore, what this instrument is doing is, by privileging the ruling parties, because it's an easy way of getting your policies changed, your decisions changed, various other favors from the ruling parties. Obviously, favors can only be given by the ruling party, the party which is in control of the government. Therefore, it is further skewing the level playing field in elections. It was already skewed. But instead of setting that right, in fact, my lord, there should have been a limit on the expenditure of political parties. Instead of doing those things, or saying that political parties and candidates should only take money and spend money through banking channels, is doing exactly the opposite with electoral bonds. It's allowing, in fact, my lord, there are a large number of companies which do not have so much black money. They have only white money.
In the erstwhile regime, prior to the electoral bonds,
yes,
a corporate entity could make contributions as well.
Yes, yes.
It was 7.5% of your profits.
Yes, but they had to disclose.
That's right. That's what I was coming to. The difference there was that you had a duty to disclose, so that by your disclosure, there can be a public scrutiny into whether this is really a quid pro quo for any benefits that you have received in terms of government contracts, licenses, policies, concessions.
So there are two separate arguments resting on this, my lord. One is that this is promoting corruption. This instrument of anonymized donations is promoting corruption. That's one separate argument, and corruption has been held to be part of, or a corruption-free society is part of Article 21 rights of the citizens. So this is one argument. The other argument is that it is actually eroding democracy itself, because it is skewing the level playing field between ruling parties and opposition parties on the one hand, and between parties and candidates on the other hand.
And another point perhaps which you may also want to explore is that this is not an anonymized donation in relation to the donee. It's an anonymized donation in relation to the rest of society.
Yes.
The donee may or may not, but could know who the source of the donation.
Normally they would know. Normally they would know, because...
That's what I said.
Yeah.
So, according to you, therefore, when you say anonymized donation, it's not really anonymized in relation to the donee who
Correct.
receives the fund.
Absolutely, absolutely right. It's anonymized for the rest of society.
It's anonymized in terms of the disclosure of the name to the wider public.
So it's anonymized at two ends. It's anonymized at the end of the company or the person who buys the bonds by the scheme itself, meaning that nobody else other than the person and the state bank can come to know who's buying the bonds. And law enforcement agencies, if they are investigating some act of corruption in relation to these bonds, etc. The second is that the political parties which receive...
That because of the exception carved out in the rules, the investigating agencies can verify that. But obviously, the general public is not aware of that.
Yes. General public will not come to know. So therefore, my lord, it's on one hand, it is promoting corruption and thereby violating Article 21 rights. And on the other hand, it is skewing the electoral system in favor of the ruling parties and in favor of parties vis-a-vis candidates, further skewing.
But Mr. Bhushan, even if the earlier regime was there, the donations to the ruling party will be always more sizable in number compared to the non-ruling party.
True to some extent, yes. They would be more sizable in number, but I am saying that here...
So whether we have this system or the earlier system?
So here you are giving kickbacks. Earlier
system also it could have been, but at least the donor and donee, they had to make the disclosures.
there you could be prosecuted. If you had given donations to a political party who in turn had given you some favors by way of mining contracts, etc., you could be prosecuted for corruption. But now, because nobody will come to know as to who has donated, whether you have received some quid pro quo, etc., therefore, it is promoting corruption. It is privileging. And if your lordship will see that now virtually all the donations or most of the donations are coming by way of electoral bonds. So therefore, and the bulk is going to the ruling party.
And in the case of a company,
Yes.
now even the shareholders will not be told
Yes.
who you are contributing to.
Correct.
The shareholders will only be given
Yes.
the net result.
Correct.
That we have contributed as a company 250 crores this year.
Correct.
Shareholders now have no access to who you have contributed that amount to.
That's why in that Justice Chagla's judgment, that Tata judgment, they said that yes, we are allowing you to change your memorandum because you are permitted, but you will have to advertise in the newspapers saying where and to whom you have donated. And they said that we are doing it because they have come to us with permission to amend the memorandum, but other companies may have already this provision in their memorandum or in their articles that they can donate to political parties. And therefore, at the end, they have cautioned that we are now advising Parliament to bring in a law which will make it mandatory for public disclosure. Of course, even earlier in the regime, citizens could find out who has donated to whom, because even when companies donated to particular parties, they were still obliged to maintain accounts and disclose their accounts in the company website. But ordinary citizen is not expected to be able to go through all the websites of all these 23 lakh companies to find out who has donated to whom, etc. Therefore, they said in that judgment that we are placing this condition upon you that you disclose it by way of advertisement to the public. And they said that because this requirement is not there for other companies who may already have political donations in their articles of association, therefore we are now advising Parliament to bring in a law to make this disclosure compulsory. Now, instead of doing that, we have gone exactly in the opposite direction, that we have now anonymized to the public even that possibility of coming to know from the returns of these companies who has donated and to whom, because that has been removed. So therefore, my lord, my submission is that this will destroy democracy. It's already, my lord, our democracy was almost a money game. It had become a money game. They say that corporates cannot be permitted to fund political parties. Here, what we are doing is going exactly the opposite direction. We have even removed that limit of 7.5%. We have permitted foreign funding and so on. We are instead of providing for greater transparency, we are removing whatever transparency that existed by this means. Now, if your lordship sees, the only significant contributions are all to ruling parties either at the center or at the states. There is no significant contribution to any party which is not in power in the center or in the states during this period. All these parties are in power, and the central ruling party has received more than 50%, almost 60% of the total contributions. So therefore, what this shows is that, number one, that electoral bonds has become the main source of donations to funding political parties. It is by far the majority of the funding of political. Number two, that almost all the donations through electoral bonds are being received by the ruling parties, primarily by the ruling party at the center and secondarily by ruling parties in the states. Number three, that essentially all the donations, because 94% are in denominations of 1 crore and the remaining are in denomination of 10 lakhs. Virtually nothing below that. Almost not even 0.1% below that. It's all 10 lakhs and 1 crore. So therefore, is mostly corporate funding. And then, my lord, I now want to show some interesting facts about who is giving this money.
This can be used as a kickback.
Yes. And I'm saying that there is circumstantial evidence showing that it is being used as a kickback. Actually, you have legalized kickbacks. By this instrument, you have legalized kickbacks. Because you can easily give a kickback and get away by anonymizing this kickback. There are a number of mining contracts, etc., that Vedanta has been getting. It's also one of the largest donors of electoral bonds to political parties, so that much we know. Now, just see this IFB agro case. These are just examples which will show that there is substantial indication that these bonds are being given by way of kickbacks to influence either government decisions or influence government policy. So this is a somewhat direct indication that they have given, that this one company has given, that it has subscribed and given electoral bonds because it was facing excise-related issues. So to ward off excise-related issues, they have paid these electoral.
Perhaps, Mr. Bhushan, we'll keep individual cases out of reckoning because, the reason is those companies are not before us.
No, I understand.
Also, any observation which we make in regard to those companies may implicate them in criminal wrongdoing.
I'm not saying that.
So we'll take it as a sort of an illustration by you to buttress your argument.
Of course.
The constitutional argument can't rest on that.
Yes, it is an illustration.
Also, as a matter of first principle, they are not before us.
I understand.